My next guest was 8 months pregnant and was driving home from her last doctor checkup before the scheduled birth of her son. That's when her car was struck by a drunk driver. She survived the crash, but her unborn son did not. The drunk driver was charged and pled guilty to vehicular assault, but she says her baby was the victim of homicide. Heather Surovik is now pushing for the Brady Amendment, named after her unborn baby boy, Brady. The amendment, which would change the criminal code to include unborn children, will be on the Colorado ballot this coming November. I'm very glad to have Heather here today. Heather, thanks so much for being here, because I know this is a tough story to tell. I want to ask you, what was the hardest part about the car accident and Brady's death? I mean, I know the death, but then the punishment continued.
Right. Well, the hardest part for me was I was in ICU for 3 days. So when I woke up out of ICU, my dad and my mom and my sister were in there and they were crying. And I was like, okay, my dad doesn't cry, so something's wrong. And so I was like, well, what's going on? When I was able to talk to him, and they're like, well, Brady was killed in the accident. And so then we would have the cops came in, and they would tell me all the charges that he was facing. And I was like, well, what about Brady? Well, Colorado law says because he did not take a breath, he was not considered a person. So therefore, he was considered a part of my injuries, and there wasn't an additional charge for him.
I think this is shocking to most people. They would just assume that if the unborn child is killed, and in your case, I mean, as we said, he's 8 months along. This was your last doctor's checkup when you're going home.
Yeah.
But he's not considered a person.
Right.
Were you shocked by that?
I was really shocked. And I wouldn't have known unless, until this had happened. I had no idea that that's how Colorado law was.
Now you're pushing for an amendment to the Colorado Constitution that would make it so that if you injure an unborn child, you could be charged for the injury to the child as well as to the injury of the mother.
Right.
Talk about the importance of this to you, Heather.
The Brady Amendment is so important to me. There has been other mothers that this has happened to, in Colorado specifically, as well as, nationwide, of course. But knowing that when this amendment passes, and I'm pretty sure that, I really have faith that it's going to pass. When it passes, it's going to mean a world of difference to me, because now people can get the justice, and there will be 2 victims instead of just 1 like there was in my accident.
I'm curious, who could be against this? Who would be opposed to recognizing your situation and situations like it?
Right.
Who's against it?
There's the pro-abortion lobbyists are against us.
But this is not about abortion.
It's not.
This is about whether you have a respect for the fact that you've carried a child, you've protected, you've loved, taken this child to the doctor, you've done all the prenatal care, and then someone takes that child from you. And if it was another day and he was out of your womb, right, it'd be murder.
1 hour. If he would have been in my car for 1 hour, born for 1 hour, it would have been murder. But for the fact that he did not take a breath, Colorado law says it wasn't a person. He wasn't a person. And
the person who was the drunk driver, he got charged only with assault to you.
Right. Well, and to my mother and she was in the car with me,
okay,
and my 5-year-old son was in the car too. So he got 3 charges instead of just the 1.
Did he go to prison?
He committed suicide before he got sentenced.
It's a horrible story all the way through. I just find it so important to help people know. How many states are you aware of? How many states have something like a Brady Amendment?
There is 38 other states that have a similar law, like the Brady Amendment, a fetal homicide law. 38 other states.
What's the prospect of this passing in Colorado?
It's pretty good. I think there's a lot of people, when we were out gathering signatures, there was a lot of people that had no idea that this really does happen, and that, we need to change it. So I think that now that people are aware, and just getting more and more people aware, I think we've got a really good chance to get it on the books this year.
Heather, nothing is ever going to bring Brady back.
Right.
But if this passes in Colorado, will you feel like that there's a sense of closure, at least something to honor his life?
I think that this whole journey that I'm on right now, being, from the beginning, from the accident up until the ballot time, it's all my closure. Just knowing that I'm doing something that's going to help protect the voiceless, and to be a voice for Brady, And that's all that I'm set out to be, is a voice for Brady and an advocate for other pregnant women in Colorado that this could happen to.
You're a remarkably brave and articulate spokesman for your son, and I thank you so much, and I hope that you'll let us know. We'll be watching this because I'm anxious to see how this turns out in Colorado. Heather, thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you very much.
God bless you.
Thank you.
In my home state of Arkansas, we have a law similar to what Heather is fighting for in Colorado. It's called the Fetal Protection Act. One of the law's strongest supporters, former State Senator Bill Walker, will join me next to talk about it. We'll be right back.